Mouse Rebel News fans, I want to go ahead and make a quick video on Shin Dong-Hyuk. He was the person who claims to have escaped from Camp 14 in North Korea and made his way to China and wrote this big horror story book about his supposed life there. I'm doing this because it was a request made by a viewer. Now, I was actually saving this for Defend DPRK Week 3, which is the last week in September. But I can go ahead and actually give a few quick thoughts on it. One of the main things that the mainstream media pointed out about his story was that none of it could actually be verified. And this was also believed by the person who wrote the book for him, because obviously English wasn't his first language. This is the guy who wrote the book for him. He told him what happened, and this guy turned it into a book. None of this can be verified whatsoever, and even the guy who wrote the book for him acknowledges that. However, it's claimed that it has a validity because he has backing by human rights organizations in South Korea. They say that his story is legitimate based on absolutely nothing, so therefore his story is automatically true. There are some problems with his story, like he was born and raised in a prison camp and he spent his whole life there, which makes absolutely no sense. Not to mention there's nothing to actually confirm that this is true. The amount of resources that would be wasted by having people live their entire lives in there is astronomical. I mean, think about what it would mean to raise children in a gulag. I mean, there's all the medical care necessary for it, education and all that. I mean, this is just diverting a ton of resources that would be much better sent to be put into the public. I mean, it's a resource nightmare to raise children in a gulag. Not to mention, it's just inhumanly evil. Something that it's just not a believable story. Both from a storytelling standpoint and from a use of resource. It's just completely ridiculous. There's also some things that also don't make sense. Apparently Shin's mother was given to his father as a reward for hard work. Now I can't imagine the jails are actually co-ed. Again, that's a logically inconsistent story. Why would jailers reward people who work hard that are going to be there for the rest of their lives, supposedly, anyway? And why would they reward them with a woman when camps or prisons are segregated anyway? It just doesn't make any sense. There's also the interesting little bit where he says he had never heard the word love until he was in South Korea. Because apparently if you're in prison, words cease to exist. There's another moment where he seemingly just completely panders to white Christians, where he goes, I go to church sometimes on Sundays, but I don't understand what's being said. So basically he's a Christian. There's also a moment where he's obviously pandering to white Christians, where he says, I go to church sometimes on Sunday, but I don't understand what's being said. Basically, this is his religion is banned in North Korea, despite the religious political party and the churches, and actually now a mosque in the country. This is his way of generating the sympathies of white Christians. And what's probably the most important fact about this, Blaine Harden, the guy who wrote the book for him, doesn't believe him. He says he believes the book is based on one gigantic lie. The book reads like a Hollywood script. It's just not a believable story. And even he, the guy who wrote it, believes it was based on a gigantic lie. If even your own biographer doesn't believe you, then really people should be taking a second look at this outrageous Hollywood-like story. Now, aside from the actual story itself, there are some other things that we do have to consider when we're actually looking at this. The deliberate skewing of the term gulag. Of course, the term gulag is meant to invoke certain images, false images. You can still use the term because, hell, I still use it. What they're saying is they're invoking this image of a concentration camp, and sometimes they actually do outright substitute prison camp or labor camp for concentration camp, which is completely dishonest. A labor camp is where you're sentenced to go to do rehabilitative labor for a set amount of time, and then you're released. A concentration camp is where you go to die. Now, these are two completely different things, and the dishonesty here is the deliberate portrayal of them as being the same thing, when they are obviously not. Another problem is, he has no way of actually confirming that he's actually a North Korean. There's actually nothing to confirm that whatsoever. However, even if he is North Korean and he actually was in jail, we have to understand two things. One, prove he actually was in jail. And two, prove he was in jail for the reason they claim, that somebody disagreed with the government. I mean, this is an age-old story. The prison camps, or political prisoner camps, are full of people who disagreed with the government or didn't believe some kind of line or just basically didn't do what the government told them to. And there's 150 to 200,000 people. Now, see, the problem with this is it's absolutely ridiculous. So you're telling me the whole prison system in the entire country is filled with nothing but people who disagree with the government. I mean, apparently human nature is so terribly evil according to the right wing. You know, Ayn Rand, oh, we're all evil, we're inherently selfish, and this is the way we have to be. Well, except in North Korea, apparently, because everybody's good, and it's just people who disagree with the government that are bad. I mean, nobody rapes, murders, commits robbery, or nobody commits crimes. It's only people who disagree with the government that go to jail. Which is completely different from here, because, like in the United States, nobody ever goes to jail because they disagree with the government, right? Because there weren't, hundreds, if not thousands of people arrested over Occupy Wall Street. Because those people are there because they disagree with the government and disagree with the people who run the country, right? Oh, but they're just portrayed as criminals that are just trying to, just trying to cause trouble and tear down the man and all that. I mean, there aren't really people arrested for just literally disagreeing with the government. Now, usually they're reserved for drone strikes. It's a completely hypocritical double standard. Assuming everybody in jail in North Korea is there because they disagree with the government. Yet in the United States, you literally have that. People going to jail because they disagree with the United States government and then claiming they're all criminals. It's just stupid. After all, it doesn't take very much to actually convince people of North Korea being supposedly evil. If you can tell them that Kim Jong-il was the largest purchaser of Hennessy and that it actually works out to, according to what they say, drinking 2.5 bottles of Hennessy a day, which would be lethal, you're pretty much going to believe anything. And to finish this video, which was meant to be just a couple of quick notes, this is how absolutely distorted the lies against North Korea, because it's not a U.S. client state, actually are. This is how bad it actually is. North Korea can no longer deny the undeniable, said Sam Zafiri, the Asia-Pacific director of Amnesty International. For decades, the authorities have refused to admit the existence of mass political prison camps. There are places out of sight of the rest of the world. Now, another organization says this. Notwithstanding North Korean claims that there are no human rights violations in the DPRK, both Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il have defended and justified the forced labor prison camp system. It seems organizations dedicated to slandering the DPRK can't get their story straight. It would be really nice if maybe once a year the anti-DPRK community could get together and coordinate on their lies so that they don't accidentally end up with something like this.